Hello and welcome to the Longev Lens. Please join my co-host, Dr. Sebastian Pedersen and I as we cut through the noise and hype around longevity, health and wellness and turn the latest evidence into honest, practical insight for living better for longer.
And just a quick disclaimer before we dive in, this podcast is for educational purposes only and doesn't constitute medical advice. If you have a healthcare problem, please consult your doctor or qualified healthcare professional.
Welcome to the Longev Lens. Today, being that it's our very first episode, we just wanted to go through the introductions to Dr. Sebastian and I, how we've got to where we are today, building up to the things that led us to the conception of Seb founding Longev. And we also wanted to go through a lot of the healthcare systems and I guess a lot of the frustrations that we've had within the Australian healthcare system from an allied health perspective as a physio, but also from a medical perspective through Seb's experience as well. And so today, let's kick it off by Dr. Seb. What has led you to where you are today? What has been the building blocks of getting to where you are as a rehabilitation specialist and where we've got to today with Longev?
Yeah, good question. I think my journey started more of a personal journey rather than professional. So I got sick when I was 15 or very young and diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. At that point in time, I was just all in on soccer. Like I was absolutely certain that professional sports was my career choice and that's all I needed to do. Made a complete 180 after I didn't have the physical ability to perform anymore. And after being sort of frustrated and I guess not really getting the answers that I wanted, being a 15-year-old and you wanted to explore all potential options to improve not only my health span, so how the quality of my life, but also how long I'm going to be living with a chronic health condition. So that led me to pursue medicine from someone who wasn't necessarily academic in school. I pursued medicine initially to answer my own questions, get control over my own health and my own life. And then what I realized early on was that my journey and that I had so many unanswered questions, it wasn't just me. Like every single patient or so many patients I was seeing were in a similar boat where the reactive healthcare system was extremely good at taking care of their medical problem, but it wasn't necessarily good at improving their quality of life, their home environment, improving their lifestyle, their behavioral choices, educating them about what they could do to actually take control over their own health, rather than just relying on taking medications, doing procedures, and seeing a lot of doctors' visits. So then I pursued rehabilitation medicine as a specialty. And I was drawn to that specialty because of a couple of different reasons. One being it was usually nice people who were working, like the consultants and the specialists at the time were very nice. I was like, oh, seems a nice specialty to be involved in. But mostly because of the fact that it was a specialty that considered the whole person. Like you have a lot of specialists or specialties, that are just really honing in on one organ or one body system. Whereas for me, I was like, I want to be able to help the whole person, whether that was their physical health or their biological health, whether that was their psychological health or emotional well-being, or whether that was their social health or including themselves, their family, their home environment. So I felt like I really wanted to help the person. And I also wanted to be able to help people in real life. Like a lot of specialties, you just help the person in an artificial environment in a hospital or in a clinic, whereas rehab, we're very focused on the person in real life. What can they do their day-to-day, work, driving, overall functional ability, long-term prevention of decline. So that's always something that really drew me to rehab medicine. But as I realized very early on that rehab medicine was still super reactive. Like I was taking care of people with strokes, heart disease, dementia or cognitive disorders, once these conditions were already very well established. And we actually got taught in rehabilitation medicine to be preventative. I actually had a look at it this morning. So in our curriculum, it mentions prevention 25 different times. But it's just a very reactive specialty just by the nature of the healthcare service. So really, as I was specializing in rehabilitation medicine, I was upskilling and doing the deep dives into the literature about, well, what can I do to actually prevent all these conditions? Because bread and butter rehab is strokes, heart disease, lung conditions, cancer, osteoporosis, frailty, metabolic disorder. So it's really the big sort of facets of healthcare that's causing the biggest amount of death and disability. So I just wanted to apply the same strategies, but then actually prevent these conditions. So I knew that when I came out, I wanted to create a health service that was in parallel with Medicare to actually give people access to a preventative and proactive pathway should they wish to try that, or should they wish to pursue that avenue as well.
Because a lot of the illnesses that you've also just said are largely preventable. Like, I think a lot of people might even use it or have been educated on the fact, it might have just been genetics, or it's the way that you grow up and all that sort of stuff, which is in a way, it's the epigenetics, it's the environmental aspects, which you'd say you'd probably get 90% of the result from educating on prevention and then taking those actionable steps in prevention to avoid all those things that we've both seen with your strokes, your heart disease, your frailty, osteoporosis, which is extremely crippling when you see people getting, even as young as their mid-50s and their 60s and 70s, and then they just decline and you're just watching it wilt away. It's very hard to watch, and you would have seen it at the very core of it in the hospital of when it's happened at the time, because usually I'm seeing it later on down the track. So you would have seen it in very much that acute phase setting, which is, as you said, it's something that should be prevented a lot earlier on than when it actually came on.
And I think it's a very good point, because like I love what I do. I still love rehab medicine, hospital medicine, but for me it was like I saw myself where I was when I was a teenager in these people, and also not only that, but the family at large. Like good examples is like stroke. Like once someone's had a stroke, you're really trying to, it's damage control. Like you're really not trying to, like this, usually people after they had a stroke, it impacts their ability to work, which they can't work, puts financial strain on their family. They need care. It becomes all of a sudden the burden on that individual becomes a family-wide burden, and then from an economics perspective, becomes a society-wide issue to all of a sudden care for this person who has this debilitating condition. And I was just exhausted in terms of, two things. I was exhausted with telling family members and patients what their future was going to look like. And then superimpose that with the constant flood of people in the same situation. Like it's just damage control, putting band-aids, trying to make some good out of a bad situation, rather than preventing the bad situation in the first place. And that was where, like, no, if I really wanted to make a difference, I've got my whole career ahead of me, I'm still young, the only real way I can see that I can make a difference at large is to prevent these preventable conditions in the first place, to avoid these difficult conversations that are life-altering for the person and their family.
Do you think that they were life-altering for you as well? Like, how did you find emotionally? Because it's never an easy conversation at all, and you're the one essentially the head of it. Whereas in a physio situation, the hospital would be like, oh, okay, we know our role, but ultimately it's you that has to give a lot of the, I guess, the diagnoses, the prognosis as well of what this is going to look like in future.
I think I never had a problem. I was always did my absolute best to be a good communicator, and and be relatively blunt, because of course, have to consider the other person's feelings and where they're at. But once you build that rapport, and the good thing about rehab is you're not seeing them one day or one surgery. You're spending weeks and weeks with these people. So you really get to know the individuals and their families. So once you've built up that rapport, that's when it's time to have a conversation with the family and the patient who's obviously suffering. But I think absolutely, as you said, if I didn't have these experiences over like a period of 12 years, it wouldn't have been necessarily as life-changing for me. That, I want to make a difference, I want to help these people, but I just didn't feel like I could make enough of a difference unless I was going to go upstream, still do the same medicine, but you're just doing it much earlier in someone's life rather than when it's too late.
Is that sort of the conception of where Longev came from as well?
Definitely. So yes, I always knew I was going to do something like this, not necessarily Longev. And then as I started, as I finished my specialty, and I branched out into private practice, and then I started doing my lifestyle medicine, preventative, proactive medicine, and then now it's very topical to sort of call it longevity medicine, which still isn't really a formal thing. Then I was just, through a friend of a friend, happened to meet two other very passionate individuals, being Kevin and Zara, my co-founders. And then start of last year, we decided to commit and try to change the health service or the health system.
Yeah, and it's an extremely exciting prospect, which was definitely something that I wanted to come on board with because it fitted into sort of like, as you say as well, a lot of frustrations with the healthcare system, not feeling like you're able to do enough on a broad scale. Like it's awesome that you can build the relationships with the people one-on-one. You do get to spend a lot of time with them, particularly physios. We probably get to spend more time outside of the hospital service and like in private clinic, and get to know people over months, if not years as well. So it's definitely something that you really want to have an all-encompassing health outlook over everything as well, which is definitely one of the most exciting parts about Longev, that we get to go to the very roots of blood tests, go through all the scans, any red flags that might come up, and those red flags being like the preventable things we were talking about before with like your cancers, your heart disease, your even just the markers of your cholesterol and avoiding things like dementia and trying to get ahead of those things long before any of this has actually come up. So it's a really exciting space, and it's definitely something, as you say, it's almost on trend now, as seeing regenerative medicine and all these little hypes and trends going viral online. But it also seems like they're just the tip of the pyramid. They're just the 1%ers that are coming out that they're not exactly evidence-based yet. They're not proven long-term. And a lot of people aren't doing the foundations. Like they aren't exercising regularly. They aren't sleeping regularly. They aren't drinking water enough as well. Like even just the basics of nutrition, which is all the things that you've so far are already doing with Longev. We go to the foundation so that you can earn the right to go into these other areas as well, which is a super exciting prospect as well coming through.
Absolutely. And I think before going into like details about what we want to talk about with the health service, where I see the future of medicine in Australia going, I do have a lot of respect for my colleagues who do practice what's traditionally known as reactive medicine. So whether it's cardiologists, gastroenterologists, surgeons, because they are brilliant. Like I must admit, they do amazing work. And in the grand scheme of things, if you think about the entire burden of disease in Australia, whether it be death or disability, only about or approximately a third of that is preventable, which is still a massive portion of the health system. Imagine a third of all people, healthcare conditions could be prevented, which means that we still need reactive medicine for the 2/3. Like we still need all of the other medical specialties, and they're brilliant. We just need to really look at, okay, well, what situation are we in now as a society, and make sure we actually move forward and actually adapting or evolving to cater for what society needs, which right now is prevention of the 1/3 of death and disability.
Before we touch on to that and get into a real deep dive of where that healthcare system is at the moment, earlier on you said that you were diagnosed with an illness at a very young age. And already at that young age, you already started to think about your health span. Most people aren't thinking about their health span being that, they want to live well with a lot of quality, sometimes up until their 50s, 60s, 70s, and then they're starting to realize, I actually need to start making a change. You said you already realized that at such a young age, which is, I think for me, it was more so, okay, when I get into my late 20s and 30s, that's when I know, okay, typically declines start changing in your 30s. You're already so far ahead of it.
Yep. Yeah. I think so. I've been practicing medicine now for 10 years. And when people look at me, they always think, you're too young. You're just following the hype of longevity medicine or all these very, very interesting fields. But I've been living this life for 20 years now. So it's often when people look at my age, I get judged a little bit. When people actually, I'm always going to be a patient for longer than I'll be a doctor. And I've lived this life for 20 years. So I've got 20 years of lived experience plus 10 years of practicing medicine. In addition to that, obviously medical school and further university study. So I think that's where I'm obviously always going to draw a lot of inspiration for myself, that this isn't just a professional choice or something I find interesting. It's deeply personal, and it's the biggest passion of mine outside of my family, of course.
And you've lived it. You've lived all these
Yep.
experiences too,
Yep.
which I think is an absolute must for anyone
Yeah,
in any
exactly.
health field. Whether you're getting into that specialty, you have to be able to practice what you preach, I believe, in a
Yep.
massive way
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into the
What
deep
about-
dive
What about yourself?
on myself. I forgot about that. So I started, so I'm a physio. Haven't actually been practicing as a physio for all that long. It's only been about 4 years or so now. But for the last 15 years, I've been working in exercise rehab, strength and conditioning, any and all facets of personal training, group fitness training, all that sort of stuff as well. And I think with that career beforehand, I always felt like I was missing more of what I could do for more people. I always wanted to try and find how much value can I give to my clients or patients more, which about 8 years into personal training or so, I went overseas, which was almost a really awesome reset for me to go and live in Germany for a couple of years. And then after about 6 months of being away from work completely, I went, fuck, I really miss actually working with people. And I actually really miss the outcomes getting with people, and I miss the results. I miss being able to see the progressions of people. And it was, for me, you could probably look at it as almost a very surface level type of thing, because I was mostly working in gyms and rehab and sports performance, that sort of stuff. But you see profound effects happening that are compounding over and over and over for a really long time, which is, I think that's definitely the purpose and why. And so when I came back from overseas, that's when I knew, okay, I have to go and study further, and I wanted to go into physio. And it's exactly what I did. And then once I did that, I think, again, coming back to what you were saying before about having all these personal experiences, I grew up playing rugby league for about 15 years and rugby union and played sevens. And so I was in and out of physio's clinics quite a lot. I can't even remember how many injuries I would have had at the moment. Anyone from back then, like my coaches and even teammates, would probably say, yeah, I was made of glass. But it was a lot of these experiences that made me go, I actually really like this job. I don't know, rehab almost became like it was just a part of day-to-day life as well. And so like I've lived ankle injuries, knee injuries, hip injuries, lower back injuries, neck, concussion, shoulders. Like I've been through surgeries. I've been through a lot of these different bits and pieces that I can now relate back to with my own clients as well. And so that was always a massive motivation. And as you say, like those lived experiences give you a world more than you can ever get out of a textbook or that uni could really ever teach you. And like you say, when you build the relationships with patients, that's the big thing that really sticks true, because we know the research out there that if people believe that they're going to see someone and they'll get a response from it, they're about 70% more likely that they'll actually get a good positive result from it. Whereas if people are going into a service already against the idea that they're going to be helped, that's actually a really big challenge. So building up those personal experiences, okay, I've lived this, I know what to do, I know what we can try to do from an evidence-based perspective, but I also know personally, is it all that practical? And so all these little bits and pieces over a long period of time have sort of led me to where I am now, being that previously I've studied more in nutrition as well, which is a massive part of our clients' day-to-day lives. Like it's probably, I'd say you get 70 to 80% of the result of what you want to be getting, whether it's blood work or whether it's from just a body composition and reducing weight, maybe putting on muscle, all that sort of stuff, sports performance. It's a massive portion. Sleep, we were talking about ourselves the other day as well, really. If people aren't getting enough sleep, it is sort of a form of torture. You're not going to be able to mentally perform. You're not going to be able to physically perform. So a regular 7 or 8 hours of sleep and making it consistent for a long period of time is actually, again, compounds over and over. There's all these lived experiences that sort of got me to where I am now. And then with Longev, when this job came up, I thought, wow, this is like nothing else on the Gold Coast. Is like nothing else I've seen really within Australia that wants to knuckle down on a lot of the foundations of, same again, exercise, sleep, water, try to reduce alcohol wherever possible. Like all these little bits and pieces that we know and have seen can prevent all the long-term illnesses, diseases, injuries, frailty, all that sort of stuff that is really crippling for the person, for the person's family, for friends, and for society. So it's all these things that Longev we can try to get ahead of long before it's actually happened. I hope that in 10, 20 years time that we can look back and go, okay, yeah, we've actually really made a lot of change to our patients' lives. And that's probably, for me, that's so much more exciting because it gets down to so many root problems, root causes that we want to try to address long term. And coming back to preventative, reactive medicine, yes, reactive is needed. The hospitals are needed. Like your profession is absolutely needed. But what if we can prevent, as you say, at least 30% of those? If we're looking at that population of Australia, what are we, 27 million now? If we can reduce 30% of that, like that's millions of lives that could potentially have a profound effect on for a long period of time as well. Yeah, that's probably what we wanted to talk more about today, is that preventative, reactive nature of the healthcare system that we're trying to deal with, and something that we want to try to divert away from a little bit more. And then, we wanted to go through your thoughts, Seb, because again, you've been there in the acute phase setting. We've already touched a little bit about the reactive nature of it. What's your thoughts on what we needed? What can be done? What should be done? What needs to be done that we can sort of start now?
Yeah, good question. I think I always come back to giving people a little bit of a history about the Medicare system itself. Obviously, here in Australia, we have Medicare and we have the private health system. Private health really just gives you choice about which doctor, and instead of paying with time, as in a long waiting list in the public system, you pay with money to expedite a consult, a surgery. But the private system doesn't really support proactive or preventative healthcare, at least not yet. Medicare being the big health system, I think it's important for everyone to get a bit of history actually about why Medicare was founded. So it was founded in the 1980s, with the goal of giving a universal access to GPs, specialists and hospital care for Australians. So that was the intention. Fast forward to today, so another 40 years forward, people assume health is Medicare. Whereas the purpose of Medicare was just provide basic acute care services or reactive medicine for people with health problems. But that being said, it's done remarkably well at what it's set out to do. Like our life expectancy from 1980s to now has gone from 71 years of age to 81 years of age for males and 78 to 85 for females. So we're living much longer because of Medicare. And the biggest cause of death in the 80s or the mid to late 1900s in Australia was heart disease. Medicare enabled an 80% reduction in death from heart disease. So it's been extremely successful at what it's set out to achieve. The problem now is those extra years gained, or those 7 to 10 years in lifespan extension, haven't necessarily correlated with health span extension. So people are living longer.
The quality of life.
Exactly right. Yeah. But those extra 10 years of life are really just lived with chronic disease, with gradual decline in function and gradual loss of independence.
A lot of people living in nursing homes.
It's exactly right.
Exactly right. All that sort of stuff as well.
So we still need Medicare to manage acute problems, but in order to fix this last decade or last 10 to 12 years of life, plus, if you look at the cause of death for today, heart disease is still number one. So yes, we've reduced it by 80%, but it's still the biggest cause of death in Australia. So we need to prevent these preventable conditions. And secondly, we need to focus on quality of life and health span, so that throughout life, people either we prevent or delay onset of chronic disease, but then also that as people get older, they're functional, or they're still able to do what they need to do, whether that's travel, play with grandchildren, play sport, rather than working your entire life. You get to 65, and then from 65 onwards, you're really just declining slowly until you pass away. Like that's not really something I'm looking forward to, not something I want to, not an experience that I want to have as I get older. So that's, I think, is the important caveat. So Medicare's done well, but we need to improve and need to start focusing on health span or quality of life as we get older.
And that age of 65, as soon as you retire, I mean, I know personally, I've seen people who have retired and then their health has just plummeted. So you work your whole life, you get to this stage and this stage of life, and what we know is that, the health outcomes are really poor, and people have worked their whole lives waiting to this period of time to go, okay, also I get to live now and I get to actually go and travel and get to do all these things. And you think, we've actually seen the opposite happening.
Yep.
And I think that was a statistic, I don't have that off the top of my head, but that was previously, especially for men, when they'd lost a lot of that purpose at that time in their life, and then their health outcomes, they might only last another 5 years or so, and just go, wow, this is, it's a really hard pill to swallow, really. Like as you say, heart disease. I have some statistics here. So it was 2023. There was almost 17,000 deaths just from heart disease itself. A very, very close second was dementia. But heart disease has been number one since 1968. And you said before, like, it's been declining, which is awesome. That's exciting that there's some things are changing. But again, is that because of health and Medicare pharmaceuticals are just making people live out longer and maybe dying from other things? Maybe they're dying from flu or something at the time. Dementia, that one's climbed exponentially. I think I saw from 2006, it was ranked 40th in Australia of causes of mortality, whereas now it's almost equal first.
First for female, but yeah.
I can't believe how much has changed in 20 years. Do you think it's just because of like just an aging population, the baby boomers getting to that age? Is it because of, again, preventable reasons over the last 40, 50 years that really now we're starting to catch on to more?
Yeah, I think the heart disease one is so I think mid to late 1900s, there was two big things. One was public health campaigns, reducing smoking, reducing alcohol, being aware of reduction in saturated fats. That was one thing. But then also the Medicare of people actually getting access to hospitals, GPs, specialists to manage heart disease and thus reducing death. But you're actually right. Dementia, increasing population, aging population, higher risk of dementia as you get older, but also the burden of diabetes, hypertension, blood vessel, like vascular disease, all resulting in also like Alzheimer's or vascular dementias having a huge component of those disorders being of some sort of metabolic or vascular origin.
So what's vascular dementia?
Vascular dementia is more like where you have small strokes or high blood pressure, and they cause small infarcts or small areas of the brain that start to pretty much start to die. And it's very much a stepwise decline. Rather than you have sort of Alzheimer's, that's a gradual decline over time. Vascular dementia is very much like you have a stroke, there's a big decline, then you plateau for a while, then something else happens, you have a decline, then you plateau, another insult, another decline, rapid decline, then a plateau. So it's very much sort of a stepwise decline that's correlating with insults to the brain due to blood vessel disorders.
Okay. And like, so those two, like Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, they all come under the umbrella of dementia.
Dementias,
well,
and then you have dementia with Lewy bodies, Parkinson's dementia, and all these other neurocognitive disorders as well.
Yeah, okay. All right. Have you had any real life examples of this actually happening from like the acute hospital sort of setting as well that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like some examples, and I think it's also important to differentiate doctors from Medicare. Doctors aren't Medicare. They work within the system that is Medicare. So doctors, I feel, especially the ones that I work closely with, are getting more and more frustrated, are wanting to have more time with their patients, be able to be proactive in their care, and also have a longer term view of their patients rather than just thinking about that next 15 minutes as a consult, wanting to think about, okay, well, what can I do for this person over the next 10, 20, 30 years? So I do feel like Medicare as a system is a big ship. It's going to be hard to shift. But I do think this change that's coming now, that's coming through, is going to be driven by doctors within the private sector. But as you said, the biggest priority is it has to be evidence-based, outcome-focused, rather than just a testing service. And exactly right, just following something that's going to be very clickbait on Instagram or following the hype where possibly selling products.
Yeah.
It has to be an evidence-based service.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, like your peptides and your stem cells and all that sort of stuff, which seem to be promising so much. But I think there's something called like the Yamanaka factors. That was a type of stem cell as well that has been brought in, what was it, about 2012-ish or so. But they didn't do anything with it for such a long time because they found that they couldn't try to isolate certain areas of the body they actually wanted to.
Yep.
And they found that it actually made cancer cells grow, or it made tumors grow. So having a completely opposite reaction of what we want, which is the same thing. It's like I get people asking me about peptides and things like that, and I think, well, hang on, have you actually assessed everything else that's going on in the body to make sure that we mitigate any and all risk for all these sort of things that are happening as well? I'm sure you've probably had
100%
similar conversations.
Like too many. You really just need to focus on fundamentals. And yes, if once you've done everything else and you get up to those 0.1%ers, that's a little bit experimental, then you really have to be careful before you start to pursue those pathways or those treatment plans.
Could it work in the other way? Let's say, as an example, like would someone comes into you, they do have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, they've got a lot of visceral fat around their belly, and they have a lot of these markers that are sort of screaming out, okay, we need to make a lot of change. Is there anything that you're aware of right now where we should be going, okay, do we actually have the peptides, or do we go through any of these other maybe hormone therapies that'll help to spur on all these other effects to make sure that we do reduce all of these other factors?
Not necessarily. I'm always careful of like treating the root cause to start off with, rather than just putting another Band-Aid solution of an exogenous molecule. So for me, it's very much, what's the problem in the first place?
Exogenous molecule.
Because being like peptides or supplements or medications or something you're putting in.
Yeah.
Whereas the problem is not a lack of peptide or a lack of supplement or a lack of, there's something else. Let's focus on what the cause is first. Focus on the behaviors, focus on the lifestyles. Then we do a quite aggressive disease prevention or proactive disease detection. Then once you have those pillars, then we can sort of pursue, okay, where else could we pull any possible levers for that individual that's personalised, that is outcome focused, and we're trying to achieve a certain outcome. But you really have to go through those steps before you get there to those.
Yeah, I think a lot of the motivation too is if you would imagine if you were faced with your own mortality, based on a lot of the assessments that we do, the peptide's probably not going to be the first thing, or the hormone therapy is probably not going to be the first thing that you actually want to be getting into. It's going to be like, okay, how do I actually get my life back on track so that I'm not going to this isn't going to be fatal in the next year, 5, 10 years. I think that would probably change a lot of the psychology behind it as well, to seeing, because social media, it's in our face all the time. I know me personally, like I follow a lot of health and wellness related accounts. And so when you see something exciting, you think, oh, I want to try that. But again, I was sort of held off for a really long time because I wanted to make sure all the other factors are sorted out first. Because, we just don't know. There's just no evidence. Yeah,
and it's not sexy. Improve your exercise. Sleep better.
Eat
well. It's not sexy. Like
it's all the things that we know. Exactly. It's boring.
But it's hard. But exactly, I think there's, and that distinction between knowing and doing is massive. Like I see a lot of so-called longevity clinics now who are offering all these tests. And then everyone's like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do all those tests. Where it's like, well, with what we're dealing with medicine, with preventative, proactive care, it's the testing is like the easy bit. Like if someone, and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the whole longevity sort of boom or longevity clinics, because testing is easy, and a lot of people are paying a lot of money for testing. Whereas what I see that what you really need to be paying money for, or if you really want to pursue this pathway, is making sure that the people you're dealing with, you know who they are, you know what their intentions are, but also that they're focused on implementing and interpreting the tests in the right way for you so that you can achieve your goals.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest people often know, and I've heard, is that when they've gone to see a GP and they've had some basic bloods, or they've had even sometimes more specific tests, they've walked out of the test going, okay, I got the test done, but now what? What do I do? Like, I don't have a plan of actually having someone interpret the results that I've just gone through.
Yep.
And then to go, okay, what do I do for the next 3, 6, 12 months, or what do I do for the rest of my life? Like, we've already seen with our clients that, what was it, that one of our patients had mercury that was 4 or 5 times higher than
10
what
times
it should.
optimal.
10 times optimal.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And that was for years.
Yeah.
That was ongoing, where the doctor just said, oh, no, don't worry about it. We'll just leave it as it is. It must just be an anomaly.
Yep.
And stuff like that. Like, we hear about that every single day. And people want to be proactive about their health, and they want to get ahead of these things. And even recently, we've had some clients that have said, look, I've got some family history and issues, but the doctor that I've been seeing has just said, no, you're too young. Don't worry about it. There's no symptoms yet. Clients telling us, hang on, I want to get these tests. I want to know more about it. It's the same sort of thing that you would have found as well.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what we set out to achieve with Longev. Like, first, evidence-based, outcome-focused, and providing the support that people need. Because the support is the pillar for everything, really. You need to make sure that people have the available expertise when they need it to overcome barriers. So as you said, that those, and I've seen it, whether it's cholesterol that's been 2 or 3 times ideal for 5 to 10 years. You mentioned mercury, and it's just, for me, it's just, it takes time. And I'll give you an example. So if you want to work out why someone's mercury is high, it's not going to take 10 to 15 minutes. I had to, for this individual, spend a couple of hours getting to the bottom, taking a history, calling up clinical toxicologists, public health in where they lived, to make sure that everything, whether it was their home environment, whether it was their workplace, where everything was checked of what could potentially be causing this. Because the obvious cause is obviously fish. Like the mercury, the main common cause of elevated mercury, especially methyl mercury, is fish intake. But if there's no significant fish intake, well, where else could this be coming from? To make those calls, to facilitate those introductions, to provide the support that took an hour or 2 hours. And that's where it's sometimes convenient if someone, and obviously I can't comment on what happened between the consultation, but for me, it's just looking back, looking at the numbers and the trend, I was just very alarmed that yes, this person might be fine now, but they've got at least another 20 years to live. Like, I don't want them to have any issues down the track. And I think having that lifetime view rather than just a short-term view of risk is very important, where I see people in their 50s and 60s who have a history of heart disease or history of stroke, or family history, not personal history, and their cholesterol or their glucose has been 2 to 3 times where I want it to be. But because they don't have any symptoms, like they're exercising, they look well, then nothing really gets done. Whereas for me, I'm like, well, I know they have a family history of it. They're already showing evidence of risk. Let's aggressively reduce risk. I'm not saying we jump in and put them on medications or whatever, but let's just find the cause of why is this high in the first place, and what can we do now to implement or to change behaviors and change lifestyles, and also to make sure that we actually prevent the risk, because I don't want this person to have the same fate that their parent or their grandparent had. I want them to live the rest of their life being independent, and then I take care of their health, and I want them to be able to do whatever they want with their life. Yeah.
You said before as well about, like, coming back to this client with a high mercury. Could they have possibly just been a hyper responder? Is that a sort of a thing that can happen? Because they said that, they weren't eating a lot of fish. That's a common reaction from it, like just your tin tuna and that sort of stuff. Do you think, they might have just been eating more than what they should have been, or sort of maybe more than what their body was able to tolerate?
Correct.
And so what are the long-term health outcomes of if that was to continue?
Yeah, I always go to neurological. Like my first one is always brain. You've got to protect those brain and the nervous system, especially with mercury at that level. Like, they might not be showing signs of toxicity now, but the trend over 7 years, if we don't do anything, then we're on the path for a quite significant risk of something happening going forwards.
Again, more like any of your dementia sort of risks.
Yeah,
those
yeah,
sort of
or
things,
some sort of cognitive issue. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, which is again, it's something that if they're not presenting any symptoms, then it's a hard one to swallow or to try to think, oh no, I don't need to go see a doctor. It was like, oh, this is where the preventative medicine.
and I think that's part of the problem as well. Like Medicare, yes, is imperfect, but it's done very well at what it was set out to do. Doctors do a very good job, and I do believe that doctors want more preventative and proactive care, and I do believe that's going to come. As a doctor, I'm sitting in a clinic, right? Let's say a couple of years ago when I was working in private practice, or even as I was working in the public system, I don't know when people are booked in to see me. Like you just the same with you. When you used to do your clinics, doing your physio, whether it was exercise before that, you don't necessarily know what people are booking in to see you for. But we grew up in an environment, and we're all built to think, I see a doctor when I'm sick. So you have a Medicare that incentivizes reactive care just by the nature of it's a fee-for-service model. So it's very easy to see a patient, bill Medicare, move on. It's hard to spend the time to coordinate with different health professionals, to think long-term preventative care. It's difficult in a reactive model of care. But I think equally as difficult, and what we need to really focus on going forward is education of the public. That people think, I see a doctor when I get sick, which means you also have a self-fulfilling prophecy in that people only see doctors when they're sick. So it's a reactive Medicare system, and people are only built to believe that they don't need to see a doctor unless there's a problem.
Do you think Medicare will actually incentivize prevention?
I would love to see that going forward. I have seen some Medicare billing numbers that are for preventative care for GPs. I haven't seen many of them being used. Obviously, I'm not a GP, but I do believe it's a hard ship to turn. But I do believe that going forward, something has to be done. Like I was frustrated a couple of months ago when I heard that the government was funding or reducing the cost of medications by a couple of bucks. So whether it was $33 to $31 or whatever it was, I just thought, all that money, in the grand scheme of things, $31 to $33 probably doesn't make a massive difference to someone's life. But putting all that money into a preventative proactive, or starting to build more preventative proactive care, billing items within Medicare, I think could have gone much better. But I think the education of people is just to know that this is what your future will most likely look like when you hit 65 to 70. It's going to be a gradual decline. If you don't want to live that way, if you want to be traveling, living your best years when you're in your last 1 to 2 decades of life, then you have to see a doctor early to get on top of lifestyle behaviors early, disease risks early. Any conditions, you have to make sure you're proactively addressing risk continuously every year. Like I do believe we need to do better at educating the public and society at large to actually see a doctor before there's a problem.
Yeah, because it's at least 50% of that population once they hit 65 that have a disability.
Yeah,
that is,
or chronic disease. At least one.
Yeah.
At least one, and many have more. And that's,
yeah. 4 people in this room, 2 of us.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's not looking great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a harrowing thought when you actually have that presented to you, which, you don't think about it. Well, you're not looking to most people aren't looking to think about it until it's actually happened, which is far too late. It might be 3 months too late. It might be 5 or 10 years too late. Do you think that working in the hospital system as well, did you often see a lot of repeat offenders that as much as you try to help prevent, educate, do you think you saw a lot of the same people coming back for the same treatments that could just be
frequent flyers?
Yeah,
you see quite a bit of which is sad. Like a lot of the hospital services is a revolving door. You patch someone up, you send them home. Same thing happens because they go back into the environment with the same support, same behaviors. Same thing happens, come back in, patch them up. But it's just a stepwise decline. It is frustrating. And sometimes seeing like how we address osteoporosis, how we address strokes in the hospital system. Like a good example is someone comes in with like the way a stroke pathway works in hospitals. Someone wakes up or has symptoms, get rushed to hospital, have a CT scan, to tell us, is this a bleed type of stroke? Is it a clot type of stroke? Then once that we know which type of stroke it is, then a whole variety of investigations start to happen to see what the cause of stroke could have been. Whether it's a bleed type of stroke, the biggest one is usually blood pressure related. If it's a clot type of stroke, we're looking at their heart rhythm to see if they've got any silent arrhythmias. You do an ultrasound of your heart, see if there's any clots or holes in the heart. You do blood tests, looking at cholesterol, sugars, looking for risk of diabetes, homocysteine, clotting disorders. Then you do an ultrasound of your neck vessels as well. It's like that whole, what we're talking about here is remove the scan to identify what type of stroke it is. We're talking about basic bloods, cholesterol, glucose, homocysteine, clotting, blood pressure, an ECG, and ultrasound. Available, cheap, low risk.
Yeah. So
why aren't we doing this earlier? Like if we know people are at risk, but it's become accepted care to do this later on, especially for things like atrial fibrillation. Like a lot of atrial fibrillation, being a heart arrhythmia, can be silent. So why don't we do regular ECGs? Or I know some people do, but I do believe the education of that, because you can get some very simple tests that are cheap. And same with osteoporosis. Like there's two ways to diagnose osteoporosis. One is with a scan, bone density, and the other one if someone's fall and had a minimal trauma and a fracture.
Yeah.
Like sadly, a lot of the diagnostics of, a lot of the most common pathway, or one of the most common pathways, obviously of the two, is people fall, break a hip, back, top of their arm, or a vertebral body, like one of their bones in their spine. But where was the early assessment of falls risk, strength, power, and a bone density scan? Like this isn't expensive, complicated pathways of testing. This is just basic medicine done well, thinking that, okay, the majority of people do have a chronic disease getting older. A majority of people do have at least one chronic disease as they get older. Let's try to address factors or risk factors we can now to prevent that happening. And I'm not trying to say the government should fund this for every single Australian, but I do believe that healthcare should be about choice.
I was going to say, how can you, because we've said there's a lot of things that are preventable in all of this.
Yep.
How can you get that through to the general population to try to think proactively about this and try to actually get this into their minds? That is it just education, or is it, do you think you have to live it, or you have to be able to see it? You have to have it presented to you?
Definitely. Present it to you, and education is key. Yeah. Without people seeing this, like if you don't walk the wards of the hospital day in, day out, then you have a biased view of how people live, obviously. But I do believe awareness, education, and getting it presented to people, but also providing them the choice. Like this is what Medicare or the government provides. If you want to, and I don't have any problems with it being presented like this to a patient or a client. You can get reactive care, GP, specialist, hospital care through Medicare, completely fine. If you want more on top of that, then invest in your own health. Like I don't expect the government to screen every single person for all these conditions, but some of these simple, cheap, low risk testing, is that something we should be offering our patients and clients? It might cost $100, $200, $300 to get this done, but you're already investing or already spending thousands of dollars in holidays, mortgage, cars, education, financial investment. None of those things are going to be feasible if you don't have your health.
Yeah, that's correct. It's as that priorities of, as you say, we like to go out for dinners, or you'd like to go and spend time with your friends, and often that involves spending a bit more money and things like that. Whereas, if you did spend that few $100s on investing in the health, how much more life could we actually get out of you as well?
Exactly. And I think what people don't understand is every year of chronic disease management as you get older, and especially if you need hospital admissions, that could be $10,000 to $20,000 a year. as you get older. You might not feel the pressure because you're not paying all that money. A lot of that's going through Medicare for especially the hospital admission. But in terms of macro, or at least economics or healthcare economics in Australia, that's tens of thousands of dollars per year per person with a chronic disease. As you get older, then you can't live at home because you get frail, you get deconditioned, develop sarcopenia, and you need a nursing home.
Sarcopenia being more like the muscle and strength loss. Strength loss predominantly,
with time of age resulting in disability and impairment. And then all of a sudden you need care at home or you need nursing home support because your family can't support you anymore. We're talking $20,000 to $100,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
So putting that a little bit of money, investing that as you're younger into your health, whether that be exercise programs, ensuring that you're sleeping well, nutrition, basic personalised testing protocols based on your risk and the stage that you're at in your life, that investment is going to pay off in dividends as you get older. Not only won't you incur these costs of being unwell, you also reap the benefits of being functionally independent and doing what you want to do as you get older.
It's a hard thing to see because I think a lot of people, even if they're not in the hospital system, they might have seen their grandparents or sometimes their parents going through these processes. And until you see them not able to stand up from the bed, they're not able to go to the toilet themselves, that hits really hard to have that, especially if you're that client or that patient and you now need someone to look after you to be able to go to the bathroom, which is that you've lost so much of your independence, which could be so crippling, but it's also something that could be so preventable ahead of time. Like I often used to try to liken it to like our superannuation, where the money just goes in, you don't think about it until you get to about 65 where they let you have the money again. You go, oh, sweet, I've got this bonus, which I think that's kind of like with the exercise now. You need to do those little daily deposits so that when you do get to that stage, that you are 65, 70, that you're not needing other people to come and do a lot of these things for you, or that you can actually live life to your fullest, so that, you know, that 70 to 80-year-old, that yes, we've extended life, but that quality is, if someone's just operating at their baseline all day, every day, and they get hit with an illness or an injury or something, that baseline just absolutely plummets. And as you say, that quality of life is just gone. Like I watched that with my grandpa a couple of years ago, and he was mentally pretty much all there for most of the time, but then physically, just same again, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't go do all the things that he wanted to do, and as much as he wanted to do it, the body just wasn't able to keep up with him. And he was pretty active for a long time as a carpenter, but yeah, same thing. It became. It's right there in your face. This is absolutely not where I want to be. And I know they said that before too, that no, if I ever get to that stage, just put me down. Like, well, we're faced with that now. So
exactly right. Well, can't do that.
They didn't want to be a part of that, which is something that same thing. It's those daily deposits, non-negotiables that we want to do now. So that you reap the benefits 30, 40, 50 years from now. And we can actually have like a long, youthful, fulfilling life. That's probably the big things that really we're wanting to target with Longev.
Exactly.
That's. I guess if you were to take anything away from today, for our audience, what would be, I guess, one or two big points that you'd like to see them take away and address?
I think if I could touch a little bit more on support, I do think support is key to achieving both maximizing your health span and your lifespan. And what I mean by that is you really need at least 3 or 4 things to have access to you to make sure that any health problem is addressed appropriately and timely. The big one is everyone needs a good GP. And what I mean by good is someone who identifies, or someone who you identify with and is able to help you with your goals. So they're able to, whether that's personalised, preventative, proactive care, they can cater that for you. So I think it's important of having a GP that's got time, which is hard, I understand, but having a GP who thinks long-term risk and is also focused on the best outcome for you. And a good example of that is often you are provided recommendations as to what's normal. A good example is I've seen people with very high cholesterol. You do testing and they don't meet the Medicare criteria for some of the genetic causes of elevated cholesterol, but only about 20 to 30% of genetic causes are known, which means you're missing a huge proportion of people who could have a genetic predisposition to having elevated cholesterol, which puts you at risks of strokes, heart disease, vascular dementia going forwards. Being sat down and presented, this is what the PBS offers in terms of treatment, but there are these other options that are available to you if you don't respond to these medications, but that do incur a cost. So whether it's like a common example is some medications cost $300 a month, and yes, it's expensive, but they provide you a lot more protection, or a lot more, they're much more targeted and effective at lowering cholesterol for those who don't respond to lifestyle, statins, and the normal cholesterol lowering medications. So I think having a good GP that gives you time and is focused on the best outcome for you is key. Non-negotiable, need that. Secondly, because obviously GPs are stretched and only have a limited amount of time, you do need some, whether it's a concierge doctor, whether it's a personalised medicine service, someone who's able to be with you throughout the year to provide you with the support that you need. So whether that's lifestyle optimization, whether that's more regular follow-up testing, whether that's advanced diagnostics or treatment, someone who's with you and you have access to. I know it does incur a cost because a lot of these services are private, whether it's obviously, I know longevity clinics fall within this realm. I don't like to think of Longev as a longevity service. I do think of it as a personalised health service that is parallel to Medicare, and it does incur a cost. But again, are you investing in your health, or are you not investing in your health? Then I think once you have those two ticked off, a good GP, personalised medicine service, then you also need to use all available data at your disposal, whether that's wearables, whether that's technology, and then whether that's direct-to-consumer testing. I know a lot of our clients are interested in the tests they can purchase themselves rather than just relying on us or GP or anything else. But I do think it's very important you have a health professional involved with any of that testing, because as I said earlier, testing is less than half of the equation. The majority is the interpretation and implementation.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think that's a perfect spot to wrap that up. Interpreting said try and get a personalised medicine as much as you can, which is accessible, and then having someone to be able to guide you through that process. Really, I think that'll wrap up perfectly for what we've done today. Thank you for your time today as well.
My
to
pleasure.
Dr. Seb.
My pleasure.
Remember, a lot of the everything that we're talking about today is more so for entertainment. It is not medical advice per se. Make sure you go see your GP or medical professional for anything there.